Call to order of a work session of the Goodyear City Council on 1 May 2006. All council members are in attendance, and we have two items on our agenda this evening. First is the Arizona Department of Corrections plan with Goodyear to provide inmate work program, and the second one is the Goodyear's elected officials compensation and report from the Citizens Personnel Committee. And all items are for discussion only, and no action can or will be taken.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Darren Budak. I'm the Park Supervisor in the Public Works Department, and tonight we'll be presenting information on the Prairieville Inmate Work Program. Okay, the program before you this evening is for landscape maintenance in major arterial right-of-ways only. And through the process of researching this program and investigating it, we have determined or identified potential future uses for the program, some of them which are the data entry, a graffiti removal program, possible help in our fleet and facility services. Currently, the right-of-way contracts for the City of Goodyear are $585,000 and going to $880,000 this next year with addition of 3 new areas. And in 2008, we anticipate the cost to exceed $1 million. These continuing rising costs have motivated staff to find methods to control these costs now and into the future. That's where the Prairieville program came into focus for us. We identify this as a potential win-win-win situation. The City of Goodyear wins because we are provided with low-cost labor to do the maintenance in the right-of-ways, which includes the weed control, the litter cleanup, and some of the small pruning in those areas. The Prairieville Prison wins because they are working to rehabilitate their inmates and prepare them for release out into the communities. And the inmates gain because they get real hands-on work experience for potential employment once they are released. As you can see, the startup cost for the program that we have identified is approximately $233,000 the first year. These costs include all staffing, equipment, vehicles, and associated safety and training for them. Even with these costs, we are projecting a cost savings of approximately $96,000. And this savings will be identified by, we will take over 19 current areas in our right-of-way contract, and we will maintain them with the program. And we also will take over the new areas that are coming to the City of Goodyear in July of 2006. Second year costs will drop down to $162,000 based on we won't have our one-time cost of equipment and vehicles and what have you. Second year savings will be approximately $267,000. This is the reason for the increase in the second year is we don't have the startup costs, and we're anticipating a 30% increase in the current contract. We are entering the 5th and final year of our contract in the right-of-ways. And based off a current right-of-way project up in Estrella Mountain Ranch, they had an increase on their cost of over 30%. And it's come to our attention also that that contractor is no longer going to do that at that price because they feel they're losing money. So that's being rebid again currently. Implementation of the program. The City of Goodyear and Arizona Department of Corrections will need to enter into an agreement to provide the labor. And once that agreement is reached, it will be brought back to the council for your signature and approval. Once we have that, we will move forward with the hiring and the training of the staff. And concurrent with all that, we will purchase equipment and work with the PIO to do a public awareness and education program. Some of the avenues we've identified for that are HOA presentations, possibly working with the sanitation block parties that are planned, and our website, press releases, and some of those avenues. Okay. And during that time, the Prairieville Prison will complete their selection process of the inmates. And I apologize, should have introduced them in advance. I have Deputy Warden Dave Rempel and Deputy Warden Mary Keel with us, and they can talk a little bit about a selection process. But the inmates we are going to be using are what's termed level 1 inmates. I believe it's a Class C, and there's a certain criteria to meet that, and they can better answer that. Okay, and if everything proceeds like we're planning, with good luck, we could have the program up and operating in November of 2006. The field operations will consist of 2 crews of 6 inmates, and I need to make a correction. I believe the COAC you were given, in there it states 3 crews of 6 inmates. Our program, we had looked at it several different angles, and anywhere from 5 to 2 crews, and we felt it was better to start off with 2 crews, start small, and really get our hands on this before we expand the program. So we will start with 2 crews of 6 inmates, and they will each be supervised by a Parks Worker 3 position, and those 2 crews will be supported by a Parks Worker 2 who will provide additional supervision and training. Typical work week is going to be Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. There will be some time for delivery and picking up of the inmates early in the mornings, late afternoons, so that will vary. Just like our parks crew, we probably will start earlier in the summer, depending on heat and what have you. Each of the 2 crews will be responsible for approximately 11 sections of right-of-way within the city, and we are anticipating a 4 to 5 week cycle of maintenance on them. Currently under our contract, they are on about a 6 to 8 week cycle, so we're planning on improving our turnaround on those particular areas. And then each month we plan on doing a program review and evaluation and updating the program and any changes or improvements that are necessary. That's all I have right now. I'll answer any questions.
Jim?
Yes, certainly, yes.
You've talked about the positive, and of course, in the city, we're very anxious to save money. It's really important. But other cities have done this also, put in the work program. Are there any negatives that we should be aware of?
I'm not sure on the other cities' programs. Maybe they can speak on it.
Well, I guess one thing that I would say is that really they're the same kind of negatives that you probably experience with contract staff already, that you're hiring to do this kind of work. There's always the potential for something to happen.
Like what?
Well, what do you experience now?
Well, sometimes they don't show up. Sometimes
Well,
they do
I
a sloppy job.
Hopefully we know where these guys are.
Actually, that has...
I didn't compare it.
No, I know.
That,
I understand that. I can tell you that something that I hear over and over again from folks that we do work with is that they appreciate the fact that they know that our folks are going to show up, that they've had a meal, that they're they're clean and sober, and a lot of those kinds of things that sometimes are a challenge in the work field. So these are things that we do that that folks have said that they really appreciate about the inmate work crews that we provide.
You were going to, I think you were introduced to tell us about the selection process. Can you do that? And then the questions as well.
Normally what we do with, and I'll tell you a little bit about our facility. Darren was right when he said that, that these are the minimum custody inmates, and there are really 2 levels of minimum custody inmates, and these are kind of the cream of the crop. If you think of minimum custody as being cream of the crop of all inmates, these are kind of the cream of the crop. And these are all folks that are going to be your neighbors within, anywhere from a few weeks to no more than 2 years. And a lot of what we're trying to do is to bring them back into society a little bit and to start kind of putting their toe back in the water again about getting back into free society. We try and run what's called a parallel universe, which means that wherever it makes correction sense, we try and parallel the real world as best we can as far as assisting them in being responsible about decision-making, making good choices, and a part of that includes that we generally interview them, make them go through an interview process just like you would in the community to be hired. And the parts that go into it on the unit level is that we take a look at their behavior in the unit. We take a look at how they get along with the folks that they live with, both staff and inmates. And we also take a look at their programming. We have some programs in place that we think will assist them in being successful, and we expect them to be involved in one of those programs on at least a weekly basis. And so that's what we do on the institution, in our facility. In addition, there's a classification system that is what brought them down to this level to begin with, to where they could even be considered for one of these positions. And it's based on their criminal history. You're not going to have any murderers. You're not going to have any sex offenders, any of those kinds of folks. You're going to have primarily folks that are, property crime. You might have some that are, forgers, some of those kinds of crimes. Mr. Smith, do you want to help me out there? Am I leaving anybody out?
No kidnapping, no...
Right, no kidnapping, no escapes, no murders.
How about
crime, sexual nature.
have any of these people ever been convicted of a violent crime?
We are very, very careful about not having folks that have committed violent crimes. You might see someone who had a misdemeanor domestic violence at some point in the past, but you're not going to be seeing real high-level kinds of violence. And if you take a look at the folks that you would probably be looking at hiring if you were hiring from the private sector, you'd see some of those kinds of folks.
What percentage of programs that you've used in other cities have these people been offenders of the system once they're in it?
I'm not sure I know understand the question.
Well, the question is, the crew comes out, there's so many of them, what's your average of the crew that may misbehave? Let's put it like yes.
Sure.
I believe
This is Mary Keel.
I'm Deputy Warden Keel out of Payastaway Unit, and I believe that's a unit that you'd be interested in hiring the inmates from, females. The inmates that will be sent out to the community will be scrutinized very closely. They will not have any arrest of armed robberies, aggravated assaults, escapes, and that sort of thing. We've had positive success in other communities. I believe Douglas has this types of crews going on out there. I'm not sure if Tucson has these level ones going out there as well. So
now you also have a crew that's in Surprise, don't you, that's doing Habitat for Humanity?
we have Habitat for Humanity, the group of 12 females. They go out into the community. As a matter of fact, on Van Buren, right before you get to Saraval Road, there's a church there our women have been working on for several months, and they've done other Habitat projects.
And no incidences from any of these projects.
Well, unfortunately, the reason Mr. Rumpel's speaking more than I am is that I've only been at this unit for a month and a half. I came from a higher custody unit of maximum security females. So I can clearly speak with experience that these are the lowest of the lowest custody and the cream of the cream, per se. C-level clearance is the custody of inmates you're going to be having out there in the community. They're not going to have mental health issues, serious mental health issues. They're not going to have escape history, any history of violence. So we definitely want to be a good neighbor to Goodyear, and we hope that you consider this program for us.
But I also think it's fair to say that they're not choir girls either, because they had to prove to a jury of 12 of their peers that, at some point in their life they were making bad choices. But through their stay in prison, we've tried to assist them in becoming more responsible and changing their way of thinking. So,
I've got to make a couple of comments here. First of all, I think Councilmember Holland was on the right track, but when she asked for negatives, and it may not be absolute negatives, but let's talk about relative or negatives, where people's perceptions might be that they're negatives, okay? And I go back far enough to, I was living in Litchfield Park at the time that Perryville was on the drawing board. And I think that was the late 70s. And I will tell you that if you were bringing in a colony of lepers, and I don't mean the cat type, you would have had less pushback than bringing in Perryville Penitentiary at that time. So the point I'm trying to make is one of perception here. And so in order to overcome that adverse perception, I think we have to have a program in line to introduce this to the community. So if suddenly people are driving down the street and they see what color uniforms are they going to be in, orange, green, black, something to identify them, they're going to say, what is going on here?
Right.
And that guy is probably a rapist or he's a murderer. So something, a few well-chosen words to circulate to the community to let them know what's happening here and the type of people we're dealing with. And, they stumbled once and they're minimum risk type people, but they're the folks you're going to be working with and so forth and so on. It'll save us a lot of aggravation later on.
I think we can probably help you to develop something like that. But I guess my way of looking at it is that, and you guys can help me. I guess I look at you guys as a resource in that area because you guys truly have your finger on the pulse of what's happening here in Goodyear. And that you're the ones who will hear about it, across the cafeteria table or on the sidewalk or somewhere else in your community. And, we would like to help you to tailor something to what most effectively and efficiently meets the needs of your community, but I'm not sure that we're the right ones to do that. I think that's more than you guys.
Anyway, it has to be done, and
Yeah,
I'm not
right.
sure who does it, but it would get our PR people involved in that.
Right.
Because my own personal experience with Perryville, where I've treated many of your inmates in the emergency departments, I've never had a problem. I've never had a problem. Maybe that's because the guy at the door has a shotgun. I don't know. But I've never had a problem.
And then for,
and some of these concerns, obviously, we're going to get questions in the community moving forward with this, but can you talk maybe a little bit about the prevention efforts that you put forward on a daily basis? You bringing folks out in the community. We talked about the manpower that's involved, but I didn't hear anything about the manpower that might come with the prisoners from the prison. And some
Probably
precautions.
by far the most important pieces to me, and this is, I've been doing this for 23 years, so, you kind of learn a thing over time about the business, but probably the most important things to me are being proactive and preventative in nature. It's a lot better not to have a problem than to try and fix it after it's happened. And this very stringent classification process, this scrutinizing in the unit to see if they're the kind of person that we want to put out into the community once they're there. Remember I was saying about behavior and how do they get along with inmates and staff, what kinds of programs are they involved in, that kind of stuff. In addition, before they go out each day, they'll be frisk searched. Each day we'll have a correctional officer that will come by one time during the morning, one time during the afternoon. He's called a checker. These are what they call checker crews, and we'll have a correctional officer that will come by and take a look at what's happening on a day-to-day basis. Part of what they're doing is to see that things are being enforced, but it's also to be a mentor or a coach to assist your staff in better dealing with these guys. They're going to do a head count. They're going to make sure that if we sent 6 out, that there are still 6 of them there, some of those kinds of things. In addition to that kind of stuff, we'll also be doing a very thorough search when they come back in to make sure that they aren't bringing things back in with them. It's kind of a telltale sign if they're trying to sneak things back in that they're probably being sneaky out there. And they're not the kinds of folks that, we're going to take care of it. If an inmate misbehaves in our unit during off hours, they'll receive a disciplinary write-up. If they misbehave out there, they'll receive a disciplinary write-up, and they'll stay off the crew until that's adjudicated, and then a decision will be made as to whether they're appropriate to send back out or not. They could get written up for as little as smoking in the bathroom. So, we're pretty careful about, holding them accountable for their behavior.
And the interaction between our employee and them is
Yeah, our staff will be, anybody that comes into contact with the inmates will complete the required training through the Arizona Department of Corrections. And in our program, what we've identified is we want to keep them in small confined areas and under close supervision. So we won't be working out in vast open areas. We'll be in a right-of-way within, an eighth of a mile, and so we'll have a real close supervision over them.
And then, obviously, our folks carry cell phones and that sort of thing, but do they have constant contact with the prison? If there is something, they can get in touch with you? Okay.
I also brought Whiteford with us, and the reason I brought him along is because he actually has provided quite a bit of training in the past to different groups that have used these checker crews. And I thought maybe you might like to maybe ask him a couple questions or just get a real brief synopsis of the training.
It's an annual refresher training program with a new employee orientation aspect to it. The contractors go through the same contractor training that perhaps someone working inside the prison who's a contractor, like a food service worker who directly supervises inmates. They go through the same training that we'll be providing the staff here, which consists of 8 hours of a workbook. And that's like a self-study type of an item where they can, research case studies, look at examples. There's an internet access available to them, a website where they can look up pertinent policies and follow up. There's several Arizona revised statutes that are concerning custodial responsibility and supervising inmates. And then they have an 8-hour follow-up to that, where they come in and demonstrate proficiency in the workbook portion, and they work through some role plays on, average things that might happen or common redirections that you have to give to the inmates, and then reinforces their understanding of their custodial responsibility and what they, how to supervise inmates. And it turns out that most of the stuff that we'll be training them is just good employee management, whether you're supervising inmates or anybody else, but reinforcing exactly how we do it and the policies that are applicable will be covered in the training. Specifically with the female inmates, they'll also get 8 hours of additional training, which is specific to working with female inmates and the different needs that they have in communicating and working and supervising with females. And that'll be followed up every year, not with the same 24-hour regimen, but it'll be specifically tailored for the people, and then we'll come out and do that. And the work crew supervisors, again, and communication with the work crew supervisors, or excuse me, the work crew checkers that come out are available, they're knowledgeable, they'll be able to answer any questions that you have, as well as we frequently come out and tour, send out. So you may find the deputy wardens coming by and checking out and asking questions and reviewing the working conditions and making sure that everything else is running. There's a lot of oversight.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only question I have is really from a standpoint of security. What authority would our employees have, the park employees have, if one of these individuals happens to take the idea of walking away?
Their responsibility would be to call 911, give us a call, and it'll be handled in that way. Mm-hmm. It's not their job to tackle them. It's not their job to, throw rocks at them or anything. Their job is to make notification.
Yeah, and they will be trained accordingly. Is that the idea?
Yes.
Okay. Now, one other question. One other question I have is we're talking about both male and female prisoners.
No, it'll be female.
Female prisoners?
Female only. Just to let you know, I run the male equivalent of what Deputy Warden Keel runs with the females. We're just right across the street from each other. And part of the reason I'm here is because Mary just started about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and it's kind of where I've been in my position for over a year. I'm a little bit more probably adept at being able to answer your questions tonight. And so where we originally started talking about a male crew, and I told Darren recently that they're anticipating the worst fire season in Arizona history, and the guys that I would have had are now being trained to be firefighters, and I think it's going to spread us too thin, and so I got talking with Ms. Keel about maybe taking a look at having her inmates do this crew, and I've been talking with Darren about that as well. So that's kind of how it ended up happening, was this fire crew responsibility that we took on.
Good. My next question would be for Mr. Dudek. The hiring and training of staff, is that included in the figures that you gave us for startup?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Rob?
Just a follow-up on the operational side. Do our parks people have two-way communication other than a cell phone? Do they have a base radio back to Public Works?
No, they don't. Our staff currently, everyone carries a cell phone.
They carry a cell phone.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Just one comment. I feel pretty good about the orientation that you will give our employees in their relationship with the people from Perryville, because when I was teaching with Central Arizona College, I taught a class at Florence at the penitentiary, and they were very good about giving me the orientation and the information I needed to deal with the inmates and my place and the things I had to, my position as an instructor, as a college instructor within the gates. And I think that I'm sure that you will probably get the same. I'm sure that it's pretty standard and it would be pretty complete. So I'm very satisfied that it'll be safe for everyone.
There are some real benefits to this program. We had a time in Virginia where we worked with a prison fellowship, my husband and I, and we took a prisoner in our home and helped him through that transition period into life. So if you're careful on who prisoners that you pick for the job, then it works fine, and it is really beneficiary to them, and it is very rewarding when you see them move from that step out into the public and be able to join into the community. So on that end, I do support the program as long as we have all the checks in place.
One last thought on the landscape, and I said this to you, and everybody always walks out of the room at the end of the presentation, so I'll say it to you now. You know, on the landscape and right-of-way deal, even in the future, if this is successful, it'd be kind of interesting to see if we could take it a step further. We're having to plant trees and raise trees and do all kinds of things with landscape. We're going to be a very growing city. It would seem to make sense. You have proximity to us to even move this a step further and have some folks cultivate the landscaping prior to installing it in our right-of-ways, and maybe furthering that. You can use people that are less adept to maybe being out on their own in right-of-ways with our crews, but some folks that are maybe behind the wire or have closer supervision to raise the Palo Verdes.
I guess my only comment would be that within the bounds of sound correctional practice, your imagination is all that limits you as far as your ability to use these crews. I have used or been involved with absolutely amazing uses of inmate crews that, I don't want to, we can sit here for quite a while and talk about it, but there are just a lot of different places where you can put them into public service, and so.
Yeah, and I mean, given the proximity of the prison, I'm sure there's a lot of things that can happen behind the walls. You probably have shops and things that, there's day-to-day stuff that can be done that can relieve us of some fiscal impact as we move forward in the future.
We have vocational training programs at Perryville for the women that includes motor vehicle maintenance.
Culinary arts. Yeah,
culinary arts. I mean, there's just
graphic
a lot
arts.
of graphic arts. We have a call center with about 70. Actually, it's over 100 women because it's in a couple different locations within the complex. But
120 women.
that are involved in answering phones and speaking with the public on a daily basis. So there are just lots and lots of things that
The sky's the limit.
that can be done, within the bounds of sound practice. So.
Right.
I think I noticed our code compliance is like 65% of code compliance calls are on weeds. And so
Real estate signs, I hope.
so maybe that will help that end of it, and that figure will come down.
Okay.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of last points. I'm really excited about this. I've been wanting this, and I think it's good for us as a city to be involved in helping people to return to normal life, and that's really what we're doing here. And of course, it provides us a financial benefit. But if it reduces the rate of returning to prison, then that's great.
It's a good thing, isn't it?
But my concern is, are we using this as much as we could? And it's taken over a year to get this far, and these people probably are skilled in administrative type things. And do we want to look into ways that we can utilize this resource more than we are?
Absolutely. Why not get this started, see how it works, and then do exactly that? I heard they have a couple of really good ex-mayors in there.
Wow. Wow.
That won't reduce them. Consider the rate, though.
You know,
I can't index any greater than what Councilman Scott said about making sure that we do a PR program for the public on this issue. It's a touchy one, and if we don't do it right, it could come back and haunt us. So if we pay particular attention about having our people formulate these ideas and get them out to the public through the press that we have, I think it will be well worth the community.
Okay.
Thank you.
But if we could, Stephen, if you don't agree, if you don't disagree, Kay or somebody, we need to look into how we can really optimize this value.
It's really rewarding. It
And
really, I can't
it's
tell
good
how
for both
rewarding
of
it
us.
is.
Yeah,
when you find
and these
out.
are skilled people.
Yeah.
I mean, they're in there for various reasons, but some of them are very highly skilled, and they're down the street, and they're $1 an hour. Let's help them and help ourselves at the same time. But it isn't going to work if you don't decide you're going to look into it
Replace the illegal.
and report back to us at some time. Is there any disagreement on that?
I would add one footnote that from maybe a different perspective here is, as it relates to manual labor, as it relates to skilled labor and that sort of thing, no holds barred within sound practices. If it gets into being custodians of data and personal data and that sort of thing, I think it goes beyond the scope of this evening, and we would need to discuss that further. I respect the fact that you have a call center and folks are dealing with the public, but if
No, they're going to come back to us with this.
I'm just saying,
They know that.
skilled labor, go for it.
Identity theft is something that we're all concerned about. But you know what will kill this program more likely than anything else? After 30 years in the Air Force, the thing that will kill the program is fraternization. So it's incumbent upon you to make sure that that doesn't happen one time. If it happens once, it's over. You can't save it.
And add to that, Jim, is how the community accepts it. That's why I have to say that again.
So I think the preparation is, that's where we have the
You
responsibility.
want this to succeed,
Paula,
you've got
to
to
get that
introduce
out.
it to the
That's right.
community.
Well, that starts here. 7 of
Well,
us.
Paula, is she here?
She's right behind you, sir.
Okay. You got it?
Another task.
She's got it. And you got the fraternization issue?
Yes,
And you'll guarantee to us that while you're in charge, it'll never happen.
Do my best.
Failure is not an option. Seriously. Anything else on this one?
That's good.
No, it's good. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you, America.
Thanks.
Just one last thing, I would like to extend an invitation to you folks to come visit Pastoral Unit, where these inmates will be coming from.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Just might do that. Another field trip.
That's a good idea.
Field trip, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir. In January, you asked us to form a Citizens Personnel Committee to review the council compensation and retirement for the council. And out of the 600 names in the Community Services Citizens Data Bank, Jareen and Jeannie and I had the pleasure of interviewing 9 people. We had planned to only invite 7 of those to come be members of the committee. However, they were all outstanding, and we couldn't eliminate any. So we have a 9-person committee that you all confirmed on April the 10th. And all of the staff involved in this project want to sincerely thank this group of people that are here tonight and their counterparts that couldn't make it, because they worked very, very hard. 2 days after they were confirmed, they came back on a Wednesday night and they listened to 4 hours of information about compensation and retirement and benefits. And so they had a huge dose of that. They returned on that Friday, get that Friday evening, and worked for 3.5 more hours discussing all the information that they heard and coming up with recommendations to present to you. And so tonight we're going to do a very brief overview of the information that they learned, and we're going to have Jim Hacking from the Public Safety Retirement System, who is the administrator there, do about a 15-minute overview for you so you know about the benefits and what the cost would be. Jeannie Reddy will be talking about the survey results she collected in connection with compensation and benefits. And then Rob Tibbs, who was lucky enough to be selected the spokesperson of our committee, will be presenting the recommendations to you and introducing the committee members that are here tonight. So with that, Jim, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Kay. Mayor, members of the council. Again, just for the record, I'm Jim Hacking. I'm the relatively new administrator for the Public Safety Personnel Retirement System. That's the state entity that administers 3 of the 4 state public retirement plans. They are all defined benefit plans, and what that means is that what is defined is the benefit, and the benefits are defined in state statute. I'm going to go through with you in this PowerPoint presentation a review of the benefits that the system provides, but in general, the plans that the state has provide replacement of earnings lost due to retirement, death, or disability. So let's begin with the overview. First of all, one of the plans we administer, of course, is the elected officials retirement plan, which is the one I'm here to talk about. All of the employers who have their public officials participating in the plan come into the plan through what's called a joinder process, which is simply the execution of a formal agreement to cover all of the elected officials of the town or the city in the plan, and they participate thereafter and contribute to the system. The City of Goodyear asked that we have our actuary calculate what the liability would be to cover the past service of all the elected officials of the City of Goodyear if, in fact, they went through the joinder process and brought in the elected officials. As you can see from this particular screen, the actuarial cost of covering that past service would be a little under $53,000. So that would cover the liability for all service performed to date. And then there'd be liability with respect to future service performed by the elected official participants. And again, as you can see from this particular slide, the normal cost, that is the cost as a percent of payroll that would apply this coming July 1, is 22.5% of payroll. Now, there's an additional cost that's not reflected in this number, and that's a cost to help amortize what is now a small unfunded liability for the system. That's an additional 1.7%. However, having said all of that, let me also tell you that these projected payroll contribution rates are being revised even now as a result of some actions that were taken by the governing board of the system, and also as a result of legislation that has just passed the legislature and has gone to the governor for signature, and we have the assurance the governor will sign that. What those revisions will entail will be a downward adjustment in the rates that will apply to all the participating employers come this July 1. I can't tell you exactly what that will be, but as soon as we have the figures, I will let Jeannie Ruddy know what the rate will be. As far as the employee contribution rate goes, that's fixed by state statute at 7%. Of course, the legislature could change it, but that's what it has been for a very long time. Okay, let's go to the summary of the plan provisions. Foremost, of course, is retirement benefits. As I said, these are calculated in accordance with a statutory formula that is really a multiple of the years of service times the accrual rate, the annual accrual rate, which from this plan is 4% per year, and that in turn is multiplied by the individual's final average compensation, which is the high 3 consecutive years of compensation. For example, if the high 3 calculation were $20,000 and the individual retired and there was no reduction for early retirement, then the individual's annual benefit payable for life would come in at a start of $16,000, and thereafter there would be annual post-retirement adjustments made. Okay, there's also a provision for early retirement benefits, and the way this works is once an individual has 5 years of service and is therefore vested in the plan, the individual can retire at any age, but there's a 3% per year reduction in what would otherwise be the normal benefit with a maximum reduction of 30%. Okay, let's go to disability retirement benefits. The system has a very generous disability benefit program. As you can see from this screen, with 10 or more years of service, the disability benefit would be 80% of the individual's normal benefit. And when I say disability, what you have to show in order to demonstrate disability is simply an inability to do your current job. So it's an occupational test for disability in that regard. If you have between 5 and 10 years of service for disability, your benefit would be 40% of your normal retirement benefit. With under 5 years of service, it's 20% of your normal retirement benefit. In terms of survivor benefits payable to surviving spouses of deceased members or retirees, the benefit is 75% of the amount that the member was receiving at the time of death, or would be receiving if the member were retired at that point in time. The system also provides health insurance subsidies, and the amounts are reflected on this particular screen. These subsidies are offsets to insurance premiums that would otherwise be payable by the retiree. And those subsidies are subject, again, to change by the legislature, and from time to time they have been increased. Okay, and that's basically the summary of benefits of this plan. Does anyone have any questions?
I think we'll continue with the briefing, and if you'd hang around, Jim, we'd appreciate it.
I'll be happy to.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm here to talk to you about compensation. And when we did the survey of we used our 7 benchmark cities, just like we do for our city employees, and we used the same 7 cities. We look at our current market position of Goodyear city employees, which is at 101.2%. The question we asked the Citizens Committee is, what should the market position be for Goodyear City Council? So that's what they were considering when they reviewed the information. Looking at the survey results, this is the market position with Buckeye and without Buckeye. And if you were here 2 years ago on the council, you remember we did the same thing with our employee survey, because Buckeye's salaries were so out of whack that it really skewed the data. So we provided the information both ways to the Citizens Committee, and you can see here that without Buckeye, the difference is sometimes 12%. Looking at it in dollars, you'll see here that the market average without Buckeye for the mayor is $27,127, and the Goodyear average is $21,000, and so on for the vice mayor and the council members. If you include the $2,000 that the Personnel Committee or the Citizens Committee has recommended, it puts the market position here into with Buckeye and without Buckeye. Are there any questions on compensation?
No.
Very straightforward. Try to make it easy. And Dean's out of town, so he allowed me to relay the benefit information to you tonight. When we did our survey, we included salaries of the 7 benchmark cities. We looked at retirement, and we looked at benefits. And here it shows that for retirement, there were 3 cities that did not include the elected officials, and that's Surprise, Buckeye, and Goodyear. Life insurance, there were 3 cities, Goodyear, Gilbert, and Buckeye. And dental and medical, all the cities provided some type of benefit except for Buckeye. I want to explain it a little bit further in who is responsible for paying the medical premiums. In the other 6 cities that do provide benefits other than Goodyear, the council members paid the same rate as the employees. In Goodyear, the council in 2001 had the opportunity to participate in the medical and dental plan. But at that time, the medical provider said it has to be all the council members or nothing. So at that time, then it was not, they did not participate. Dean, through some research, just recently found out that council members would be able to participate on an individual basis, but the way our policy is written now, the council member would pay 100% of the premium for medical and dental instead of at the employee rate. And here it shows the rates. The rate in black is the city's portion on an annual basis, and the rate in red is what the council member would pay. And here, of course, it depends on which plan you select and what type of coverage, ranging from employee to family coverage. On the dental side, this is the cost, again, in black, that the city would pay for coverage, and the red would be the portion that the council member would pay. There would also be the opportunity for the council member to participate in the medical flex spending account, and the administrative cost for all the council members to participate would be $420 a year, and that would be offset because the 7.65 of FICA that the city would pay, they would not have to pay it on the portion that the council member elects to put into the medical flex spending plan. I can explain what a medical flex spending plan is if anybody needs. Okay, just wanted to make sure you all knew what that was. Life insurance, the benefit to our employees is 2 times their annual salary, and that's fully paid for by the city. To cover all the council members, 2 times their annual salary for coverage would be $169 for everyone, all 7 council members. Are there any questions on the benefits?
I don't see any chart in here for supplemental insurance for those of us that are old enough to be considered senior citizens. Is that offered with this?
We do not offer that to our current employees, so it's not a benefit that would be offered to council. And if you took the city insurance, that would now be considered your primary, and your Medicare would be secondary.
I see, sure, okay.
And that's all I have.
Rob, if you would.
Okay.
What's that?
Hi, my name is Rob Tibbs, and I was voted the spokesman for this Citizens Personnel Committee. I'd like to take a quick moment and have them come up and introduce themselves and give them an opportunity to say thank you for
Say no.
Oh, we all say no. I see. Okay.
Let me help you out there.
That means you need to remember
Dorothy.
names.
Lucretia, Beverly, and Sean.
Right, and then we also had Jess. Jess obviously could not be here tonight. Bill, Kent, Terry, and I think that's it. But essentially, for this committee...
Wait a minute.
Thank you. Essentially, this committee we were charged with basically providing a fair and equitable process for us to review the city mayor, vice mayor, and the committee council, their compensation package and benefits. And like Kay said, we had 2 meetings, 12th and 14th. 12th, as you've heard some presentations, basically the same presentation that we've gotten. So, Kelly talked about what each of you guys did, and we really appreciate all the stuff that you guys done. Had no idea really how much time, effort you guys put in on a weekly basis, and for that, we really appreciate that. Also, too, we got a presentation from Jim, as you've gotten today, and from a lot of members and staff. And then on the 14th, we met 2 days later, and basically we went and discussed everything that we got on the 12th, as well as we had Larry come in and talk about the financial position of the city and how that would affect any decision that we would do, how would that affect the city. And also, we had the city attorney come in and talk about the city charter. And we also talked about population projections and a lot of other different things. But essentially, we came to make 4 recommendations. The City of Goodyear should do a city charter amendment requiring the Citizens Personnel Committee to recommend to be recommended by the city staff every 2 years, and it should be appointed by the city council to review the compensation and benefits every 2 years. This charter should go to the voters at the next regular scheduled election when it is not the sole item on the ballot. we felt this was a better method than having the city staff recommend salary increases for the people that they're working for. We thought that this at present is kind of a conflict for the people that they're serving to demand their kind of raises. Also, too, the city should not enter into the public officials. We should not enter the public officials into the elected officers' retirement plan, and this is partly due to the cost to enter into that, but also too we felt that if you really not really a benefit that you guys would really need at this point. A lot of you guys have other professions and a lot of things, so you've got that taken care of. So we have felt as a group that that's kind of what we were do at this point. We also realized that if we can do a charter amendment, that maybe in future that the other committees could look at that. But at this time, we felt that we weren't recommending that at this time. Also, too, that we also wanted to give a $2,000 base pay increase to the mayor, the vice mayor, and other people in the council. Basically, we wanted to do this to show appreciation for everything that you guys have done for us, and also, too, because it seemed that before the increase, it was pretty low as compared to the other cities, and this would be a way to boost that up. So, and I believe that is it. Oh, also, too, that for the mayor, vice mayor, and council members and independents that should be allowed to participate in the city's health, life, dental, medical flex spending account and the vision plan at the same rates of the full-time employees. And so we thought that this would be a good way to maybe for individuals who need the type of things, who raising families and those kind of things, that they could, feel like they're enabled to actually go and run for council. So those are our recommendations. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
And this is probably for our city manager. Stephen, is there any compensation for I'm talking about regular staff employees, city employees, if they elect not to take their medical insurance because another member of the household has it? Is there any cash contribution to these people?
I will let Kay Wilkinson answer that question.
Currently, no. Proposed, yes. The insurance committee met last week, and they're proposing that exact plan to where it would save the city a little more than 50% would go to the city for savings of their premium, and the remainder, maybe 45% or so, would go to the employees as an incentive. The employee would have to show proof that they actually do have insurance elsewhere, and so it would benefit both the city and the employee.
So we are looking at that.
We're looking at that. That will come before you this year.
One other comment, I'd like to thank you and the committee for all your work here, because if you had assigned this project to me, I probably would have come up with the same conclusions. So since we think a lot alike, I really...
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Vice Mayor?
Just one question on the benefits. If we were to do the medical and dental and vision, would these be selective, or do they have to take all of them?
That's a good question. I know.
Selective. So now whatever is best for you and works in your individual situation, you'd be able to select. And I'd advise working with Dean Kokenauer real closely on that, saying this is what I've got now and how with this, what's the pros and cons.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay, questions or comments?
Well, I'd just like to point out to the committee that one of the reasons you were formed was to take the pressure off of staff, and off of us as individuals. But it would have put us in a very bad light with the community if we recommended our own salary, or even if staff, as you point out, that we govern did it. There would be a reflection on them as well. So I think I appreciate what the committee has done. I think you did an excellent job in coming up with the formulas that you used, and I think as the council as a whole is pretty well pleased with it.
I appreciate that, and I just like to say that, we appreciate again that to be selected on this committee. I've been fortunate to be on probably 3 or 4 other committees, and I would say this has probably been the most spirited debate that we've had. So, and the decisions that we reached were not reached, very easily or quickly. So. Just want to say.
Jim, are we including Jim Hackney in this question?
Sure.
Can I?
Jim, I have a question for you. An elected official has 5 or more years of service, may retire before meeting this age or service requirement. How did they come up with that 5, since most terms are for a lesser period
Well,
of time?
That's a good question for the legislature.
And you don't want to defend their behavior.
Well, they're all participants in the system, so I'm not exactly sure what the motivation is.
The people want you back,
But
and therefore they're
They just
willing
don't
to pay
wanna
that
pay.
retirement. I know, I think it makes sense.
and then you got
should complete
5-year cliff vesting
one
is
full
is
term
very
before you're
I think-
eligible. You should be asked to come for another.
Well, I think to answer that, the ASRS, again, treating your employees the same way you want to be treated. You know, I have 3.5 points in the Arizona State retirement system because I had 3.5 years. If I go back for a year and a half, I'm eligible. I'm not right now. It's just money sitting there earning interest. So it's 5. They have to have 5 points as well coming in. Just any employee does. But I would think that would be the same. Some of the rationale that went into the formation.
Yeah. But the term that you had, that you pointed out,
Right.
plus the time that you served on the council wouldn't make you eligible.
2 different retirement systems.
Is it? Oh,
Therefore, they wouldn't. Am I correct me if I'm wrong?
Didn't know that, sorry about that.
Can I ask a follow-up question? We talk about the recommendations, including the city of Goodyear should do a charter amendment requiring citizens personnel committee recommended by city staff be appointed by the city council every 2 years to review the compensation and benefits of public officials. To review compensation. So are they taking action on that? And then what's the reaction? Well, I mean, I guess if they're reviewing and they come to us with a recommendation, what's the action then? Does it go back out to the voters? Is your recommendation for the charter to say that the people would vote on that? Give me a little bit more idea of the spirit here then, because I see the attorney getting up here. This is my analytical mind is at work here, and so I'm thinking, okay, great. So there's a citizens review committee, and now we've empowered citizens to make the ultimate decision here, and so which we should. But it doesn't say the opposite either. So it doesn't.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, what we did was look at some different models and different city charters across the valley. There seemed to be a couple of different models, one which was similar to ours. The council votes on their own pay increases, and it comes into effect at such time as a new council is elected. Or there's a different model which uses a citizens personnel committee. Peoria uses it, Phoenix uses it. There's a couple others, I can't remember off the top of my head. They usually convene about every 2 years. The Citizens Committee reviews council pay and or benefits, make recommendations to the council, the various councils. Those councils review that recommendation to the voters in an election, and then the voters approve a pay increase. And usually in those models, when the voters approve it, it goes into effect immediately for the sitting council. So that was the two differences.
Is that the intent then of ours, is the second of those?
That's what the committee discussed, that they would be a personnel committee appointed on a biennial basis. They review council pay. They would refer that recommendation to the council, then it would go to the vote.
Okay.
So we do the charter first.
You need to amend the charter, yes.
And we get the public to approve the charter change, and
Yes.
then the committee kicks in at that point.
Yes.
I think that's the best way.
Can we legitimately amend the charter without having formed a charter committee?
I think in the charge of this committee, yes.
They can propose a charter
Yes.
change? Okay.
If the council took action to refer it, you would have to take action to refer that proposed
You
charter
would
change.
propose language to us to be on a
Yes.
ballot. We
And
would
I think
take.
you may have some draft language in the back of your packet, which is what the committee discussed.
Oh, that's right.
So when would we would refer this to the public, assuming we agree with it twice, once for a charter change, and subsequently for a pay raise only? Is that correct?
Yes, I believe the way it would be set up is you would have the charter amendment in 2007 at the next election. Then I think the committee would convene. Well, I guess we could set that up at whatever point we want to set that up. But it seems that most cities try to follow a normal election schedule. So I think I drafted that as 09 as the next election. But we could tinker with that.
You wouldn't have to send that back twice to the public. You
That's what he's saying.
Well,
can charter change and
At the
You
same
can vote
increase?
for the increase at the same time. If you vote for the charter change,
You
you vote.
could, actually, and the city of Peoria looks like they did that a couple of years ago. They initially set a new council pay through first provision in their charter, then set up the structure for future pay increases through the personnel committee. So that's something you actually could do, and that is something that has been done before. Currently, if you were to vote to enact the $2,000 recommendation, you as a council would vote on it and would go in effect when new council came on board, or as new council members came on board, or were reelected.
Which is
07 and 09.
This would be more palatable to
It's when each one.
constituency than, and I wondered if they would still be upset about it. Here we are, we're kind of voting on the fact that we want to raise. And they don't have the benefit of knowing all the things that we've been doing that are extra, just, our committee knows, but not all the folks that would be doing the voting.
I think that's some of the policy reasons behind having the Citizens Committee review these types of issues.
Which is a good idea.
So just so we understand, then we'll have, if we go for this, we'll vote for a charter change. The people will in March.
March 07, yes.
And then the next election, we'll vote for maybe a pay increase.
You don't have to do it that way. You can do it.
Both together.
As council member, excuse me.
I'm not sure that's sending the right message, that you put them out there on the same ballot.
And I don't.
We want to change the charter, and we want to get $2,000 out of it at the same time.
Oh, but you said.
different questions.
Those are two different questions.
Well, you pose them as two different questions on the ballot.
Who was going to buy that? I mean, let's face it.
I don't know. Maybe not.
It sends the wrong message, I think.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just to back up a little bit, I don't think the committee's recommendation was to put both on the same ballot. However, you could do it. Legally, you could do it, and there are models for doing that. Their recommendation, the committee's recommendation, is you vote on it yourselves, the $2,000 pay increase, and then it comes into effect 07 and then 09.
That's fine.
So such that, so
And then
such
at the next election, refer a charter amendment and then set up this new system that would take effect.
It looks better to our public.
That would be the policy.
No, but, so in other words, we won't send it to the public for the pay raise.
That is the
not this particular one, but maybe in 09, you might have it.
In the future, it would, after the amendment.
After the charter.
Yeah, so maybe in 09, the committee might get together again and say,
Yes.
decrease it $2,000 and send that to the voters. No, I'm just kidding.
That is contemplated.
Okay. So you actually,
Committee, then, who's going to write up this charter change? Because you've got to spell out the details of the committee.
Yes, I have basically, we reviewed a draft. So what you have in your packet is language that was reviewed by the committee, and they were comfortable with that language.
so let me pose an example and make this very clear, because I have to, because I can. But so you're saying vote on the $2,000 change, and then the 3 seats that are up in 2007 would get that $2,000 change. The others would not, because typically we have not done that. They have sat stagnant until their next election.
Right.
At the same time, in March of 07, you send out this charter change, and that would dictate any future changes.
Correct. It's set up a
What
new
happened?
system.
So in 2009, the other 4 seats, the mayor and the 3 council members, if there was no action by the Citizens Committee, would still be granted the change.
Correct.
Okay, so then the equality would come in.
Vote.
No, it was already voted on, it was already an action taken. So, so, I mean, in essence, when I came on, I got the $600 a month or $7,200 a year, as we all do. But Ken and Seth and you, Frank, were making less because you had voted on that change. So you were making, there was a disparity between the pay.
For 2 years, it would be a disparity.
Right, okay, that makes it clear.
Very good.
And then any future changes will be the Citizens Personnel Committee and a vote by the public.
Correct.
So the pay for any one person could change at most every 4 years, and it's possibly as long as 8.
Mr. Mayor, if we adopted a charter change,
Yeah.
We drafted it to have the Citizens Committee come together every 2 years on the regular election schedule.
And then you would get on equality in the sense that if there was a raise voted by the public, everybody would
Everybody
get
at
it
the
at the
same
same time.
Yes.
Instead of this idea where if I vote on a raise right now, I get a raise, but I haven't been reelected, and so there's not been that tacit endorsement by the public. Which is what the old system was, is
You're caught in the cycle.
you're caught in the cycle in the sense that you got tacit endorsement by being reelected, therefore you should have a raise, was the thought process in the past.
Yes. If it's approved by the voters, it would be effective immediately for the entire council.
But that would be something that the next group would be bringing forward, not this group.
Right, but if no group ever convened, you'd still have, you'd have equality in 2009, but not before then.
Correct. Well, so we get you on the microphone.
You have to come to
I don't know what way to point because my question is to you.
I'll stand over here.
The way that I interpret when we made a decision was that this would only go before the public one time. We did not want the public deciding on your salary increase because they would have no way of understanding, what it is that you do or the value of what it is that you do. I mean, we had so much information before us, so that's just, did I understand that correctly?
That's a good question.
Good point.
That's a good point. Well, the model we looked at, the Peoria model, and it's my fault if we didn't fully hash that out, does contemplate a citizens committee every 2 years and them making recommendations to the city council. Then the next step is that it does go to the vote of the people on adopting a pay increase.
Yeah, but we have a problem.
Yeah, it is.
If the committee is not solid with regard to their interpretation of what they're recommending, maybe we want to send this back and bring it back here.
We can do that. If they're willing.
I think we have a problem.
And there's time on this one. This, you certainly have.
I'm not sure I understand that.
It's a complicated subject.
It'd probably be very helpful to spell out the timeline in terms of a calendar here and show where the actions that you anticipate from the committee's perspective being taken.
Sure.
I think that, I don't know if that would be helpful to
Put
the rest of the group.
the dollar amounts down as they
And when,
Right.
that's
show how
right.
it grows, yeah.
And I think I'm understanding it, but obviously there may be some confusion.
Well, I'm hearing
The committee.
two different versions of it. One that the people will vote on the charter change, but the committee does not wish that the people vote on our rate, on our change in our
That is
salaries.
definitive, yes, sir.
Okay.
You summarized it perfectly.
So,
Is the entire committee on that going forward, that the future would be, the personnel committee would come to us, and that's the way, and then we would vote on the change?
That's right.
if that's unanimous, then maybe we don't have to bring
I
it
can
back.
draft it.
You can draft that and put it in legalese and it'll be all set.
I would check with your committee
I would
via
too.
email and.
Get a full count.
You know this drill, you sit on a board, it's all required.
My name's Sean Watt. I think the whole spirit of us trying to change the charter was basically to do what we did this time, is insert an extra step in there so there's not such a conflict of interest of staff having to recommend directly to the council. I don't think the intent was ever to have, every time the committee recommends something, to have the public say yes or no, we want to give you a $5 raise, $10 raise. We were just trying to answer, you can never get a complete separation of conflict of interest, but having that extra step in there, it is a representation of the citizens to then take the recommendation up, and then at that point it's up to the...
If that's what the committee believes and you're unanimous with this, then Rourke will just put it in terms that will be solidified.
I'm just thinking as I stand here. In essence, that doesn't technically change the way that a pay increase would be would be achieved, because the council would still in effect be voting on a pay increase. So I'm wondering if we actually even need a charter change, and couldn't you just adopt a policy that as a group, as a council, every 2 years, you're going to appoint a citizens committee to undertake the same kind of study that they did this year? And because ultimately the way of enacting the pay increase would be the same.
I think we were concerned that policies could be changed. So by having it being a charter, then it's something that, regardless of who's elected and who wasn't, that it would continue on. I think that was what we were trying to do. And let me know if I speak up.
Okay.
Well, and
Even though I understand that, it may be a little bit, maybe much to do a charter, but we just wanted to make sure that on a go-forward basis that it would always be.
It's there and it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. That was the only reason.
Sure.
Having heard this, I mean, I have no doubt what the group is saying, so
Okay.
maybe we can just write it up.
the one thing the charter does, the one thing the charter committee, neither the mayor nor any council member shall be subject to any increase during his current term of office or any increase. Okay, so it does not change the equality scale. It's still there still would be the disparity moving forward for the years to come.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, well, we thank the committee for your
Thank you
efforts.
very much.
Any comments from the council on any recent items?
Just our trip.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that was the
We got out of line here, but that was supposed to be back in the beginning.
Not on work session.
It's a work session.
Not at the work session.
Work session.
Okay.
In fact, you can wait on it until we have a meeting. That's really the best.
Do that.
That's what I would suggest, but it's,
With a bigger audience, yeah.
yeah. Okay, this meeting is adjourned.